When you think of rock and roll, I bet you can hear it in your head right now. That power, that volume, that just raw energy. But what if I told you that the secret DNA of rock's rebellion wasn't forged in some screaming amplifier, but actually around a quiet acoustic campfire? Well, today we're going to unravel the secret history of rock and roll. So let me ask you, what is the sound of rebellion? For, I don't know, generations, the answer has always been rock and roll. And that answer brings up a very specific and, let's be honest, a very loud set of images. First up, you've got the icon of the whole genre, right? That screaming, distorted electric guitar. It's the sound of pure, unfiltered power. Then you add the thunder. That relentless, driving beat from the bass and drums, it's a pulse that you can literally feel in your chest. That's the engine of the entire thing. And of course, there's the look. The leather jackets, the defiant attitude, the whole package is designed to just scream rebellion. But what if I told you that entire image, that entire sound, is built on a foundation of something else entirely? Because rock's real origin story, it isn't about the noise and the electricity. It's quieter, it's more acoustic, and honestly, it's way more surprising than the myth we all think we know. See, here's the central paradox. On one hand, we think of rock as this loud, electric spectacle. But its true foundation, its very soul, comes from the folk revival of the mid-20th century, a movement built on acoustic authenticity, deep storytelling, and, yeah, social commentary. Okay, so the first major piece of genetic material that rock borrowed from folk was its storyteller's toolkit. And this wasn't just about catchy hooks. It was about creating entire worlds and deeply human characters inside a 3-minute song. Rock didn't just borrow ideas, it was like it borrowed entire characters, whole cloth. The wanderer on the open road, the misunderstood rebel, the heartbroken lover, the everyday working-class hero. I mean, these archetypes were staples of folk ballads long before they ever put on a leather jacket. And they worked because they spoke directly to a generation that was feeling restless and disconnected, giving a voice to their own search for identity. You know, at its core, folk music gave rock a language, a way to talk about complicated things, love, injustice, identity, in a direct, honest way that connected with millions of people who felt like outsiders themselves. But it wasn't just the words. The very melodies of our most epic rock anthems, believe it or not, have their roots in surprisingly simple acoustic folk tunes. Musicologists have this great term for it, melodic scaffolding, and it's perfect. Folk music provided these incredibly strong, simple, and catchy melodies, a lot of them built on those basic I4V chord progressions. They were the perfect, sturdy framework for rock musicians to then build upon, electrify, and amplify. The transformation was almost like alchemy. You take that core acoustic melody, you electrify the instruments, crank up the volume, and then you just slam a heavy backbeat underneath it all. The original folk song isn't gone, it's just been supercharged with this new, powerful and rebellious voice. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. You can actually hear this genetic echo in some of the most famous rock music ever recorded. So let's dive into a couple of key examples. So, of course, we have to start with Bob Dylan. He is the bridge. He started out as the poetic conscience of the folk revival, armed with just his voice and an acoustic guitar. And then he plugged in, creating this firestorm that showed an entire generation the way forward. Even in his most iconic rock anthem, like a Rolling Stone, the DNA is pure folk. It's a 6-minute character study of an outcast, a vivid story just brimming with sharp social critique. The music got a whole lot louder, but the storyteller? He was exactly the same. All right, now let's turn to the Beatles. We remember them as these pop innovators who changed the world with sounds no one had ever heard before. But if you listen really closely, you'll find the heart of a folk balladeer beating inside their biggest hits. Just think about a song like Yesterday. Strip away that now famous string quartet, and what do you have? A perfect, timeless folk ballad about lost love. It's a direct descendant of centuries of storytelling. Or take Norwegian Wood, a song that is completely driven by an acoustic guitar and a cryptic, personal story. This is pure folk storytelling, just dressed up in these revolutionary pop clothes. So, what was it that pulled these two genres together? Well, it turns out both folk and early rock were tapping into the exact same cultural energy. This connection was about so much more than just music. Both of these movements were driven by this desperate search for authenticity in a world that felt increasingly fake. They rejected the polished, manufactured music of the time in favor of raw emotion and real stories. For them, music wasn't just entertainment. It was a way to understand the world and to build a genuine community around shared feelings.
So when you put it all together, without those deep narrative roots and that simple melodic power it got from the folk revival, rock and roll might have just been loud noise. Folk gave it a story to tell and a melody to sing, and that's what transformed it into one of the most significant cultural forces of the 20th century.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. If the loudest music of the 60s had these quiet acoustic roots, what hidden influences, what quiet echoes are shaping the music that we listen to today? The next time you hear a really powerful anthem, listen a little closer. You might just hear a folk song underneath it all.